Hello everyone. In this video, we'll create our first RESTful API. RESTful APIs can be created in Express.js via router method. So let's create a variable for our router. Express dot router is the method. Now, using this router, we can create our APIs. Let's create our first API, which is a get API. Now, the first argument of our get method is the path or the route. So for our first example, let's take a base route, which is a backslash. The second argument is a handler or a callback function. This callback function takes three arguments. The first one is request, second is response, and third is the next argument. Now, request is basically whatever the client sends to your API. Response is used for sending back the response to the client, and next is basically the next request. I'll cover next in a video when I do middleware in Express. Now, you can send a response back to the client saying the status. The status could be successful, failure. So you can refer HTTP error codes for this. Now let's assume I return 200 and I send back a JSON. In the JSON, I'll just pass a message saying this is my first API. Okay, so now we have created our first API. Let's see and test whether it's working. So let's start our server. Okay, before we start our server, I have created the router, but I'm not using the router. So let's use this router using app.use method. And let's write, I want to use this router which you've just created here. Okay, now let's start your server. Your server is up and running and listening at port number 8080. Go to your browser, say I'll hit the base route, which is localhost 8080, and the backslash, which you have just added. Hit it. You get the response message my first API. If you go to the networks tab, you can see your API. You can see the status code which you just passed, which is 200. Okay, click on it. In the preview, you see this is the message which we have passed. You'll see the same thing in response. So that means our first API is up and running. Now, in the normal scenario, you won't be writing this basic APIs. You will be dealing with certain collections. So for our example, second example, let's create a collection, say superheroes. So it is basically array of heroes. It contains three keys. The first key is ID, second is say name, third is the comics they belong to. Let's add one more entry. I'll add one more entry from a different comic. ID is 3. This time let's add Batman. Now, suppose someone wants to get the list of this superhero. For this, we will create another get API using our router. Let's say get. This time let's give it a more meaningful name. So let's say API slash heroes. This will also have the callback function. Let's add our callback function or our handler. This will also have the three parameters which you have just discussed. Let's this time we want to send the response. Again, the status will be 200, but in the JSON response, we'll pass the whole array. Okay, so restart your server. Let's check our new created API. So it was API slash heroes. Okay, I hit it. I get all the superheroes. If you see the network tabs in the preview, I got all the superheroes. Now assume that the user does not want all the superheroes. In fact, he wants a superhero based on the ID which we pass here. So, for example, if I pass one, I should get Iron Man. If I pass two, I should get Spider Man. If I pass three, I should get Batman. So for this, we have to create a new API. So let's go back to our Visual Code and let's create another API. This is also a get call because I'm still fetching. Let's name it as like this heroes. Now I cannot add one or two here as a static number because this value can be dynamic. So to add a dynamic value to your routes, you can use a colon and then you can say that it would be some ID. Okay. Again, go ahead and add a callback method. This callback method will again support the three parameters. Okay, now this hero ID is something which will be passed as a part of your request. Okay, so let's say hero ID will be request dot params. So this is basically parameters which you will be passing. It is a dynamic parameter. Okay, let's say request dot parameters dot the name which you have specified here, hero ID. So hero ID is your parameter. Now you want to filter the data before you send back to the client, right? So let's say let selected hero is equal to go back to your original collection which was superheroes and filter it where hero dot id is equal to the parameter which you just received in your request. Okay. Once this is done, you can in the response you can send the status 200 and in the JSON you can pass the selected hero. Okay. Again, let's restart our server. And if I hit, say, if I hit the heroes API, which we created previously, I get all the superheroes. If I add, say, one, you see, I get Iron Man. I add, sorry. So if I add, say, two, I get Spider-Man. Similarly, if you add three, you'll get Batman. So that means our API is working fine. With this, we have created our get APIs and they're all up and running. Before I close this video, there's one more thing which we can do. Now your router code is inside your server file, which is not desirable. So let's move our code and refactor our code. So go to your folders, your parent folder, and create a new folder called as routes. Inside this, you can create a new file which is called as say index.js. Now you need Express. So import Express here and for your router you need express dot the router method. Now what you can do, go to your server file, you need the collection. So just remove the collection, add it in your router. All the router specific code you can move from your server file. You can just paste it here. Don't need this line because you've already written it in index.js. This code will remain here, but now you've already added your router to a different file, but you should export it so that you can use it in server.js file. So let's export our router this and go back to your server and import that router which you've just exported using require. Go to the routes folder and index. Okay. Now again restart your server and everything should work as is. Okay, your server is up and running. Go to your browser Heroes API is working. Select one, it's working. The second superhero, it's working. Go to your base route also, that is working too. Okay, with this, I, let's close this video. If you have any question, feel free to put that in comment. Thank you for seeing this. Have a nice day.